My name is Nevaeh Carter. I'm 33 years old, currently living and working in New York as a financial specialist for a major corporation. All my life, I only wished for one moment that belonged entirely to me, one that wouldn't be overshadowed, taken advantage of, or shared with someone else. But then, the night before my engagement party, the worst happened. While reviewing the wedding plans one last time in my small apartment, I received an email from an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. Attached was a bill for nearly $80,000. The payer? Clearly listed as Nevaeh Carter. I thought it must be a mistake, but it wasn't. When I called, the manager confirmed the contract had been signed electronically, using my own fingerprint. The event title read, Engagement of Nevaeh and 10th Wedding Anniversary of Sierra Carter. Sierra, my sister, the girl who had turned so many of my life's most important milestones into her own stage. I froze in the middle of the room, the phone slipping from my hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud and lying there as silent as I was. Has anyone ever been brazenly deceived by their own family, right before the most important day of their life? If you've ever been turned into a tool so someone else could shine, leave a comment below. Hit like, subscribe, and follow along as I tell the rest of this story. Because what you've just heard is only the beginning. I sat motionless on the floor, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating that terrifying invoice laid open before me. My name, Nevaeh Carter, printed in bold in the payment section, alongside an electronic signature someone had deliberately forged using my biometric fingerprint. Nearly $80,000. For a party I had never agreed to host, never wanted to share with anyone, least of all Sierra. The sound of the door opening echoed softly behind me. Daniel walked in, setting down 2 cups of ginger tea. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to my face, frozen in shock. "What's going on?" he asked. I didn't speak, only tilted my head toward the laptop, letting him read for himself. He sat beside me, scanning each line carefully. He didn't sigh, didn't mutter, only silence, heavy and suffocating. Then his voice came low and firm. "This is forgery. Clearly intentional." I nodded, lifting the cup of tea, though my hands shook. It felt as if I were trapped in a freezing room with no way out. Yet mingled with the fear was a familiar ache pressing in my chest. That feeling I had carried it throughout my entire adult life. I remembered when I earned a full scholarship at 18. My family threw a party not to celebrate me, but to announce that Sierra would be sponsored by our parents to spend a year in Europe, finding herself. My mother told the relatives, of course, since her sister is the smart one, she'll take on extra responsibility. No one objected, neither did I. Later, when I finished my MBA, my mother hosted what she called a family reunion. But it turned out to be Sierra's stage to announce she was opening a fashion studio funded largely by money my mother had borrowed from our joint account. The one I kept topping up from my own salary. I never said no. I just shrank into myself, swallowing the dream of starting my own finance firm because the funds were gone. Daniel held my hand. "We need to do something. They can't keep doing this." I looked at him. In his eyes there wasn't anger for me, but resolve. He had stood by me through the nights I worked myself sick for promotions, and through the quiet tears when Sierra's wedding invitation arrived at my office on my birthday. "Tomorrow night we have to go to my parents' house," I whispered, my throat tight. "I need to hear their explanation." He nodded. That night, I dug deeper. Logging into my bank account, I discovered 3 pending holds from the same restaurant, spread over the past 3 weeks. I had never set foot there. The charges were tied to a secondary credit card I had given my mother years ago for her healthcare expenses. Now, it was being used to book a celebration that wasn't mine, but a replica of my sister's anniversary pasted onto my engagement. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Claire, my college friend, now a financial fraud attorney. Her reply came quickly. Charge, identity theft, and unauthorized use of financial instruments. Build a case immediately. I didn't answer right away. Legal action was one path, but I wasn't ready. Not because I was afraid, but because I understood cutting a toxic bond required more than law. It required confrontation, right down to the truth. The next evening, Daniel and I arrived at my parents' home. The living room lights glowed softly, the familiar scent of my mother's perfume lingering in the air. My father sat reading the paper, while my mother busied herself arranging wine glasses on a crystal tray. "My darling girl," my mother smiled as I walked in. "You must have gotten the event details by now. I know it's a surprise, but once you hear everything, you'll see what a wonderful idea this is." "I don't agree," I cut in. My voice wasn't raised, but it was steady, and I never signed any contract. The room went still. My mother blinked. My father lowered his paper. "What are you saying?" My mother kept her voice gentle. "Your father and I decided you'd be happy if everyone celebrated together. Sierra has prepared so much already. She even hired floral designers from Chicago and paid with money from my account," I said, using my secondary credit card, forged my biometric signature, listed my name as the event's host. She stared at me. My father stood, his face tightening. "You're overthinking this," he said. "Family is family. Isn't keeping love and harmony what matters most?" Daniel leaned forward. "Love isn't taking the most precious things from someone and calling it sharing." My mother turned just as Sierra descended the staircase in a dark red silk dress. She froze slightly at seeing us. "You're here already?" "I suppose Mom explained everything. I'm so happy we can share this celebration. I even wrote a speech for you. It'll be beautiful when we blow out the candles together." "You used my identity to sign a contract," I replied, without asking, without a single word to me. She met my gaze, then smiled faintly. "You're strong. I knew you'd understand. You're not the type to hold grudges over small things." "Nearly $80,000 is small?" Daniel shot back. My mother sighed. "Nevaeh, don't make this bigger than an island. I've spoken to the restaurant. If you're uncomfortable, I'll handle it. But haven't you always said you'd do anything for family?" "That was when family didn't treat me like a walking wallet," I said coldly. The room sank into silence. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I looked at each of them, my mother, my sister, my father. "I haven't made my final decision," I said, "but I will not pay that bill. And from now on, every expense for my wedding with Daniel will be ours alone to decide." Sierra opened her mouth, but Daniel's look silenced her. My father turned away, pouring another glass of wine. My mother pressed her lips together and said nothing. I stood. Daniel's hand clasped mine firmly. I was no longer the one who always nodded yes, and they were beginning to feel it. I walked out of that house without looking back. Each step on the brick walkway felt like shaking off layers of dust from the past. Daniel opened the car door, silent, only holding my hand as I slid inside. I leaned against the window, streetlights flashing by like sharp reminders of memories I thought I had buried. I remembered being 18, receiving the acceptance letter from Stanford with the words "Congratulations" printed boldly in crimson red. I had cried in the kitchen, believing my hard work was finally recognized. I ran to the living room, where my father was watching the news and my mother was flipping through a magazine. I held up the letter, voice trembling, eyes wet. My mother didn't even look at me. "Does that scholarship include living expenses?" Before I could answer, my father said, "Maybe you should postpone a semester. Your sister just got into a European exchange program. Flights and living costs aren't cheap." I stood frozen. The words slammed into me like ice water. One thought echoed, "Sierra, study abroad?" That night, my mother brought out bank forms. pointing to my savings account. The one I had built since I was 13, every A grade rewarded with a deposit, every summer job at the school library tucked away. Just withdraw it for now. When you enroll, we'll figure it out, she said as if it were perfectly logical. My father nodded. You're the older sister. She needs the experience to grow. I signed. Not because I believed them, but because I carried a naive hope that if I kept sacrificing, one day someone would do the same for me. When Sierra posted photos under the Eiffel Tower in her expensive knit coat, I was serving coffee at a cafe near a community college in Queens. Instead of Stanford, I enrolled in a 2-year program to save on tuition. I didn't complain, I just told myself to work harder. Maybe I wasn't born in the right place, but I could walk toward the right direction. 6 years later, I graduated with my MBA with honors. I thought I had reclaimed my path. I hosted a small dinner at a restaurant near my office, inviting colleagues, old friends, and my family. I wore a simple dress, chosen and paid for by myself, proud, independent. But mid-dinner, Sierra stepped onto the stage, holding a microphone. She wore an emerald satin gown, dazzling like she was on a red carpet. The room hushed as she began, her voice theatrical. I'd like to congratulate my sister Nevaeh for completing her MBA, and on this occasion, I'd like to announce. She paused for effect. Andrew and I will be getting married in November, and the best part is, Nevaeh has agreed to sponsor the entire wedding. The applause struck me like a slap across the face. I couldn't tell what stunned me more, my sister shamelessly putting words in my mouth, or my parents sitting there nodding as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And me? I stayed silent, still smiling, still raising my glass. That night, I withdrew $18,000 from my personal savings account and transferred it into the joint account my mother emailed me. The note read, "For Sierra's wedding." That short line echoed in my mind far longer than any speech. Now, sitting in the car with Daniel, I stared at my phone. Old memories came flooding back. No longer distant history, but ghosts summoned right back to life at last night's family dinner. I exhaled, closed my eyes for a few seconds, trying to calm myself before opening Claire's message. I checked with the law office. Forging a biometric signature is a serious crime. If you want, we can start building a case immediately. I typed a few words, then deleted them. I wasn't ready to drag everything into court, not because I feared scandal, but because I didn't want to act while still too emotional. Every move from here on had to be deliberate. If they had treated me like a tool all these years, then I'd become the final tool, the one that ended their games. Daniel pulled up in front of our apartment. He turned toward me, eyes steady. You might not say anything tonight, but I know you're planning, and whatever you choose, I'm with you. I looked at him. No more words were needed, just one person beside me, asking nothing, judging nothing, demanding no more sacrifices. After dinner, I sat alone in the study, flipping through receipts from the past 3 months. Names I'd never heard, places I'd never been. But every single one linked back to my account. I opened a new file, named it Freedom, and began copying each piece of evidence. Every line of the statement wasn't just data. It was proof of invisible cuts accumulated over the years. They thought I didn't notice. But I was still here, counting every dollar, every scam, every chance stolen from me. And now, I'd count each step until I put them right back in the place they once pushed me down to. That family dinner took place in the house I once called home. Framed photos lined the walls, lace cloth on the table, crystal glasses arranged neatly. Yet all the polish couldn't hide the sense that I was walking into a play rehearsed to perfection. Daniel and I arrived right on time, not early enough to be set up, not late enough to be rude. My mother greeted us with a bright smile, though her eyes betrayed calculation. My father emerged from the living room, clapping Daniel's shoulder as if they were old friends. Sierra smiled the moment she saw me, eyes flickering as if waiting for her own surprise performance. Dinner was elaborate honey-glazed ribs, mashed potatoes, almond-dressed salad. I sat down, scanning faces around the table. No one mentioned the $80,000 invoice or the stolen identity. Instead, my mother opened with gentle questions. Have you picked your wedding dress yet? Will it be indoors or outdoors? Sierra said you like white baby's breath flowers. Is that true? I smiled, answering lightly, dodging every trap. Daniel stayed silent, his gaze on me a reminder not to forget why we were there. Everything went smoothly until my mother set down her glass, cleared her throat, and smiled with pride. I think I have a truly special idea, something that will unite the cries I have beside. Family, save money, and still be elegant. You'll love it. I kept smiling. What idea, Mom? We'll celebrate your wedding with Daniel together with Sierra and Andrew's 10th anniversary, she announced, as if unveiling a discovery that would change the world. I heard a knife clink softly against a plate at the head of the table. No one spoke. I glanced at Sierra. She nodded slightly, then slid a slim folder onto the table. I've already drafted some points, she said brightly. Vendors, invitation designs, color palettes, everything in sync: white, silver, and teal. Just like our wedding 10 years ago. I straightened. A cord tightened in my chest. Under the table, Daniel's hand pressed gently on my knee. And of course, my mother continued, her voice warm as honey, the costs will be covered by you, just like with Sierra's wedding. She already has plenty on her shoulders. You're the older sister, and you're better off. That's how our family has always worked together. I'll think about it, I said calmly. Clearly, every fork and spoon stopped. The air thickened, as though someone had poured glue over the room. My mother froze, then gave a thin smile. What did you say? I said I'll think about it. The joint ceremony, the colors, the venue, the expenses. That's my wedding with Daniel. I need to consider. Sierra's eyes narrowed. My father lifted his glass and drank hard. My mother nodded faintly, but I caught the twitch of her brow. Actually, my father added, you kids are young. You don't always see the big picture. As parents, we only want the best for you. And me paying nearly $80,000 is what's best for me, I asked, voice low but sharp. Or is that a tradition reserved for just one child? Silence. Daniel still held my hand. I didn't pull away. Sierra broke it with a cool voice. You used to say you didn't care for big parties, just family together. Well, now we have the chance. Why change? I met her eyes. Because I realized that for years, family together always meant I was the only one sacrificing. My mother shifted her tone, gentle, almost coaxing. Nevaeh, don't use such harsh words. I don't want a family dinner to turn into an argument. Besides, I already told the relatives. They're excited to see you two sisters hand in hand. Don't disappoint them, sweetheart. Daniel set his chopsticks down. So all the planning happened before asking us? We only wanted to surprise you, my mother said quickly. A good surprise. Who knew she'd be so sensitive? I said nothing more, only smiled, a smile colder than a winter night on the Upper West Side. I sipped my water and set it down. No one mentioned the bill looming over me. No apologies, no guilt. They thought I'd nod as always. They were used to my silence, my burden, my compliance. They had never seen a Nevaeh who could say no, and they didn't know that would change everything. That night, the temperature dropped suddenly. As Daniel drove us home, the wind seeping through the windows made me shiver even with my coat buttoned. We didn't talk much. Some silences have to stay, not for lack of words, but because what's building inside needs time to take shape. Back at my parents' house, I remembered my gray wool sweater left in my father's study. My mother always called it off limits after 8 p.m., But I grew up in that house. I knew the door was never locked. I told Daniel I'd grab it quickly. The room was dim. The smell of worn leather from the armchair and polished wood from the bookshelves felt unchanged since high school, when I'd spend weekends writing essays in that corner. The only light came from the laptop still open on the desk, screen dimmed but unlocked. I moved closer, intending to shut it down, when a subject line in the inbox caught my eye: Rosewood Manor, confirmation and payment timeline. My pulse quickened. My hand hovered, then pressed the trackpad. The screen lit up, revealing a long thread between my mother, Sierra, and a representative from Rosewood Manor, the wedding venue I had never contacted. An email from 3 months ago sent by Sierra read, "Hello, Evelyn. My sister Nevaeh Carter has agreed to combine her engagement party with my 10-year anniversary. Please reserve October 12th. We'll need 2 halls, one indoor and one outdoor. For payment, my sister will cover all costs. Please send the contract under her name and contact." Evelyn's reply confirmed everything, attaching a PDF contract signed Nevaeh C. I opened the signature panel, verified biometric data. Someone had used my fingerprint, probably when my mother or Sierra handled my phone. I remembered my mother once asking, "Let me see that invitation design," and I'd handed it over without suspicion. Scrolling further, I found another short email from my mother to Sierra. "Everything's almost set. Make sure you pick the right dress for the joint walk. Don't let Nevaeh feel awkward in front of guests. Just let her think it's a surprise." The words sliced down my spine. Not just forgery. They meant to lead me into a trap with a smile. I checked the documents folder. A file named Plan 10. XLSX had been opened recently. I clicked. A spreadsheet unfolded, every detail accounted for. Column A, live band, afternoon tea, sapphire seat cushions, white orchid backdrop, drone filming, rain tents. Column B, costs. At the bottom, highlighted in red, total cost, $79,860. Beneath it, a note, boxed in orange. All expenses, Nevaeh. Said this from the start, no need to repeat. I leaned back, staring at that line. The words from dinner replayed in my head. "You're better off. That's how our family works. You'll understand." Every line felt scripted, to corner me. I raised my phone camera, snapping photos of each email, each spreadsheet cell, every transaction. I saved them into a folder labeled Backup, Cannot Delete. Then I compressed the files and emailed them to Claire. I was about to shut down the computer, but then my eyes caught the small picture frame on the desk. A family photo from Sierra's wedding 10 years ago. I stood at the far left edge, forcing a smile, holding a bridesmaid's bouquet, my hair curled neatly the way my mother liked. It was during my second semester of grad school, and I was wearing a dress I had borrowed from Lydia, a classmate. Everyone else glowed in that photo. I was the only one who looked like I was standing on the edge of the story. I pulled my sweater off the back of the chair, slipped it on, and quietly left the room. No one came upstairs to ask why I was taking so long. In the kitchen, my mother was laughing with Sierra about whether the invitation font should be serif or sans serif. My father was pouring more wine. Daniel was already on his feet, ready to go. I walked downstairs, as though I had just read a verdict meant for me not to endure, but to return every line of it. I wasn't waiting to be rescued anymore. I would carve my own way out. And maybe for the first time, I felt absolutely no fear. We got home close to midnight. Daniel was still awake, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold black coffee, his laptop open but untouched. He looked up when I walked in, his eyes searching but not pressing. I set my coat on the back of the chair, sat across from him, and stayed quiet for a while, trying to sort through everything I had just uncovered in that too familiar icy study. "Find something?" he asked softly. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened my phone and handed it to him, showing each screenshot one by one. Daniel scrolled through them silently, then shook his head, his lips pressed tight as though he were swallowing something bitter. So they really did it, he said. Not only planning behind your back, but using your fingerprint, your email, your bank account, like you're the only one expected to sacrifice your entire life for their celebrations. I nodded, my throat dry. I need to talk to Claire, I whispered. She picked up after 2 rings. I didn't even have a chance to speak before her voice came through short, steady. You already sent me the files, forged signatures, unauthorized access, illegal transfers from your account. I've passed them to the legal department at my firm to have each point verified, in case we need a full case file. I froze for a moment before asking Claire if this goes to court. You have every ground, she cut me off. But to do it properly, let them sign something official first. If they keep using your name, I'll personally draft a cease and desist on your behalf as the injured party. I pressed the phone against my ear, silent for a moment, then exhaled. Thank you. But before speaking out, I want to play by their rules for a while, until every mask comes off. Be careful with your emotions, Nevaeh. Don't let anger steer you, Claire said more gently. This game can only be won with clarity. I understand, I murmured. The next morning, I carried a plate of almond cookies over to Mr. Brooks, my elderly neighbor across the street, a retired county judge. He had a habit of sitting on his porch with the morning paper, a hot cup of tea, and a radio playing classical music. He had always been fond of me ever since my undergrad days, when he helped edit my academic essays. Good morning, Nevaeh, he smiled as I climbed the steps. Judging by your face, this isn't about the weather. I sat on the wooden chair opposite him, my hands pressing lightly against my knees. I need to ask you something. If someone used my identity to sign a contract and took money from my... But there isn't a physical signature yet, then... He paused, his gaze steady, not rushing to judge. They signed under your name? Yes, through email. And an electronic fingerprint. From my device, while I wasn't paying attention. He nodded slightly. First, that's identity fraud. It can be prosecuted as a criminal offense at the state level. But if there isn't a paper contract or a final payment, legally, liability hasn't been locked in. A better way, he paused to sip his tea, is to let them sign themselves. Once they do, the financial responsibility can't be shifted. I stayed silent. Mr. Brooks set his cup down, leaned forward on his knees, and looked at me with understanding. Nevaeh, you could easily drag them into court with the evidence you have. But sometimes, letting people hit rock bottom is the harshest wake-up call. Let them sign. When the bill comes, they won't be able to wash their hands of it. I looked at him, feeling as though I'd just been handed the first piece of a map through a tangled maze. I'll do that, I said. I'll let them think I'm going along. I started playing the part. A few days later, I messaged the family group chat. Mom, I think you're right. Combining the 2 occasions isn't such a bad idea. It'll save everyone travel time. But I'd like to be involved in planning a little. I'll meet with the venue myself. Sierra immediately replied with clapping emojis, red hearts, and I knew you'd understand. I already set an appointment with Evelyn, the manager at Rosewood Manor, this Friday afternoon. I sent back a smiley face. But as soon as I closed the chat, I opened my notes app and started listing everything I'd need to confirm with Claire: who signs the contract, who pays the deposit, which account gets billed. Daniel glanced at me, typing rapidly. Are you writing a counterattack plan? He teased. I smiled. Call it a risk management strategy. We met Evelyn at the lobby of Rosewood Manor right on time. My mother came dressed to impress, carrying a thick folder stuffed with color-printed spreadsheets, guest lists, thank you letters, invitation mock-ups. Sierra trailed behind, empty-handed but talking nonstop about velvet carpets at the entrance, pastel floral arches, a display case of her old wedding photos to inspire me. Evelyn welcomed us with a polished smile. After greetings, she opened her laptop and began presenting the draft contract. I listened to every word, then raised my hand when she reached the signing section. "Excuse me," I said lightly, "but I want one condition stated clearly in the contract. Only those who sign directly are financially responsible, no one else." Evelyn blinked, surprised, then nodded. "We can adjust that clause." My mother turned toward me, irritation flickering. "Why complicate things?" I smiled sweetly. "Because I'm a financial specialist. I've seen too many people sign for each other and end up saddled with debt. We need transparency, even in family." Sierra gave a weak laugh. "Don't worry, I'd never make you pay for anything. It's just symbolic." I didn't answer. I just looked at Evelyn until she updated the clause and slid printed copies onto the table. My father wasn't there. My mother and Sierra each sat down and signed their names. I pretended to check my phone, typing a quick message to Claire. They signed their names, no one else liable. "Got photos?" Her reply came instantly. "Perfect. It's all theirs now." I looked up, took the pen, and signed under the section labeled Honored Guest. Nothing more, nothing less. My mother didn't notice I had refused the organizer role. Evelyn didn't catch it either. Sierra was too busy chattering about glittering gowns. I stood, thanked them politely. Outside Rosewood Manor, the breeze was cool. I stepped down the stone steps, the late afternoon sun spilling across me like the opening curtain of a new play, and this time I was the one writing the script. The boutique on West Avenue wasn't big, but refined. Its polished glass windows reflected the evening light like mirrors. Jessica had recommended it. She had managed weddings for nearly 7 years and was now my closest ally besides Claire. I had booked a fitting 3 weeks earlier, quietly, telling no one in my family. But this morning, my mother called, saying she might drop by just for fun. Her words were like a velvet-covered blade, soft but chilling. When I stepped out of the fitting room in the gown Jessica had helped me choose, Sierra and my mother were already seated on the boutique sofa. Sierra wore a beige trench coat, hair in a sleek bun, makeup flawless as if headed to a press conference. My mother was in a teal suit, a pearl bracelet on her wrist, the kind she only wore when she wanted to make a point. Jessica glanced at me, her eyes wary. I gave a small nod, signaling her to let things play out. "Oh, that looks nice," Sierra said first. Her voice stretched like she was judging a contestant in a competition. My mother nodded. "Simple, classic, graceful. It suits you." I turned before the mirror, satin fabric flowing smoothly, the waist fitted, the skirt trailing softly with each step. No crystals, no elaborate lace. A dress that felt like me, quiet, straightforward, unpretentious. "Let me take a few pictures." My mother lifted her phone. Jessica leaned close, whispering, her hands shaking. She probably doesn't know yet. I smiled faintly, saying nothing. Sierra walked closer, a champagne glass in her hand, nodding as if she were inspecting a design sample that didn't meet her standards. "Are you really planning to choose this dress?" she asked, her eyes sweeping from the neckline to the hem. "I thought you'd go for something more striking." "I think this one is just right," I said evenly. "It doesn't need to be complicated, but it looks a little plain, don't you think? I just worry people will look at you and say you didn't put enough into your big moment." Jessica cleared her throat softly but didn't step in. Sierra raised the glass as if about to sip, then moved closer. I didn't flinch, just leaned slightly aside. "Let me try lifting the train in the back," she said. "It might look better with a fishtail ripple." Without waiting for approval, Sierra pinched the edge of the train and tugged. Then ripped. The sharp sound of fabric tearing filled the quiet boutique. I turned my head. A long tear stretched across the hem, nearly 2 hand spans wide. Sierra's eyes widened. Oh my gosh, she gasped. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize the fabric was that thin. It must be the material. I didn't mean to. I didn't react immediately. Jessica's face drained of color. My mother rose, walked over, and examined the rip as though she were assessing damage on a piece of furniture. How much is this dress? My mother asked, not looking at me. $5,200, Jessica answered for me. It's a limited design from a British label, premium satin. It took 3 weeks to get it in. Sierra turned away, covering her mouth, eyes glistening. I really am sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help adjust the train. I looked at her. The tear hadn't even left her eyes, yet she had already bowed her head like she was forcing herself into a performance. My mother patted her shoulder and let out a long sigh. It's not your fault. Everyone makes mistakes. This can probably be sewn up. Then she turned to me, her voice suddenly changing tone. Or better yet, why don't you just wear Sierra's anniversary gown? I had it custom made back then, quality fabric, still stylish, and it would match the joint celebration. Jessica frowned, ready to speak, but I laid a hand gently on hers and shook my head. I stepped toward the mirror, staring straight into the reflection. Even with a torn hem, the gown radiated elegance. And my eyes no longer blurred like before. They were clear, cold, and steady. I'll think about it, I said calmly. My mother actually froze for a beat at the tone. Jessica quickly draped a cover over me, guiding me into the fitting room without another word. When the door closed, she looked at me, her face a mix of anger and worry. You're not going to just let this go, are you? I sat on the chair, slipping off my heels. No, I said, but I won't react the way they expect. Jessica nodded. Do you want me to reorder this dress? I could ask the London branch to send another. No need. I'll pick something else. They can't cancel my wedding, but they just helped strip away one more layer of disguise. I stepped out of the boutique, the cool breeze brushing across my face, as if the anger inside me was giving way to determination. Sierra thought she had scored a small victory, but in her haste, she had exposed her hand. I glanced at my phone. A message from Evelyn, the manager at Rosewood Manor, popped up. She sent the updated contract confirming, "We have received the initial deposit from the official signatories, Mrs. Marianne Carter and Miss Sierra Dean." I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Claire. The pieces were falling into place. I didn't need to rush. All I had to do was let them walk themselves down the path they had built, and when they reached the end, all I would need to do was lift the curtain. The morning began like any other. I arrived at the office early, coffee in hand, already running through the numbers I needed for the quarterly report. The trading floor was quiet, the steady hum of keyboards the only sound. I told myself to focus, to push family matters aside. But right at 9 o'clock, an email popped up from internal accounting, its subject in bold, red, transfer confirmation request, 20,000 USD. I clicked. The contents froze me in place. Following this morning's call from Miss Space, Nevaeh Carter's wedding coordinator, we request authorization to deduct 20,000 USD from her Q4 personal bonus fund as a deposit for Rosewood Manor. Please confirm immediately so the transfer can be completed today. I sat paralyzed at my desk. That bonus was the result of months of sleepless nights, steering my finance team through brutal market swings. It was personally approved by the director untouchable. And now, with one fraudulent phone call, they had dared to treat it as theirs. I inhaled sharply and called accounting directly. A young staffer's nervous voice came through. Miss Carter, this morning a woman called, saying she was your wedding coordinator. She sounded so confident. She mentioned speaking with you directly, gave the exact venue name, the date, even contract details. Everything matched, so I believed her. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes for a moment. Contract details. Event date. All the same information I had seen on my father's laptop, which meant Sierra or my mother had used that data to fabricate a story and call my workplace. They weren't just draining my personal funds, they were dragging my career into their deception. Did you already transfer it? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Number. Policy requires your own email confirmation. That's why I forwarded it to you right away. Good. Leave it exactly as island. Do not touch any funds. And from now on, if anyone calls under my name, no matter how much detail they provide, you must confirm through an email from me with my digital signature. That's an order. Clear? Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I hung up, my hand clenched so tight my knuckles went white. I opened the internal chat and messaged Claire. They just called my company trying to take 20,000 from my bonus. Pretended to be wedding coordinator. She replied instantly, perfect for evidence. Every call is recorded. Get the audio, it's heavy proof. Not just civil but criminal. I strode to the IT department. Thankfully, I knew Mr. Harris, the head of IT, well. A meticulous man in his 50s, all about protocol. Harris, I need the call recording from this morning to accounting. It's identity fraud. He studied me, then nodded. I'll extract it. But Nevaeh, if this turns into a legal issue, you should officially brief the director. I will. But get me the copy first. 10 minutes later, I plugged in my headphones in a private room and pressed play. A woman's voice came through sweet, confident. Hello, I'm the wedding coordinator for Miss Nevaeh Carter. She asked me to confirm a transfer. Here's the contract code. RM1012. Event date October 12th. Venue Rosewood Manor. Everything's already agreed with Miss Carter. Please complete the $20,000 transfer today. The way she emphasized Rosewood Manor made my skin crawl. That was Sierra's tone, her fake formality whenever she wanted to sound grand. I didn't need another second to know who it was. I sent the recording to Claire along with the accounting email. She called back immediately, her voice tense but precise. Nevaeh, this isn't family overreach anymore. This is financial fraud inside your workplace. If you want, I can report it straight to NYPD. But if you prefer to let them fully sign the contracts first, we'll still hold the upper hand. The choice is yours. I bit my lip. A storm churned inside me, anger, humiliation. They no longer saw me as a daughter, a sister, or family, just a vault to be cracked open at will. Yet beneath the fury, one thought crystallized. I couldn't lash out rashly. I had to let them sign every paper, dig their own pit, so the world could see. That afternoon, the director called me into his Karen's office. He had championed me since my first day at the firm, a straightforward but supportive leader. He placed the email on the desk. Nevaeh, what's going on? Accounting says someone impersonated you. Are you in trouble? I drew a breath, then explained briefly. My family is staging a joint wedding event. Some of them have used my name without consent. I've told accounting to freeze everything, no transfers. I'll handle it. He studied me, his gaze a mix of sternness and sympathy. You're one of the best I've ever worked with. But boundaries between family and work must stay clear. Don't let anyone tarnish your reputation here. I'll log this, but I trust you to manage it. If you need legal backup from the company, say the word. I nodded, throat tight, but my eyes sharper than ever. Leaving his office, I saw a new message from Sierra. Sis, Rosewood says they need another urgent deposit. Mom might cover it, but if you can advance, that'd be great. I promise I'll pay you back later. I laughed silently. Pay you back later, the chorus I'd heard all my life. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded it to Claire with the note, more evidence. That night, I sat beside Daniel in our quiet apartment, city lights filtering through the blinds. I played him the recording of Sierra impersonating me. He gripped my hand, his eyes blazing with a fire I had never seen before. They've gone too far, Nevaeh. You don't owe them anything anymore. Now you need to think about how to protect yourself decisively. I looked out the window, traffic crawling under the yellow glow of the streetlights. Inside me, a sharp resolve was taking shape. They might think I was an endless supply of money, but with just a little more time, I would let them sign their own financial sentence with their own hands. Rosewood Manor appeared before me like a castle built to serve illusions. Towering domes, curved white stone columns leading into the grand hall, a red carpet stretching to the reception desk. I walked through the dazzling chandeliers, my heart restless. My mother had called the night before, her voice urgent. Tomorrow the contract must be signed, no more delays. They've waited long enough. I quietly agreed, though in my bag was the revised contract Claire had drafted. My father led the way, his face glowing with satisfaction at the grandeur. Sierra clung to Andrew's arm, her heels clacking on the marble. My mother walked beside them, pausing to remind me, "Smile a little, this day is important." I nodded slightly, while Daniel squeezed my hand, a reminder that we were the ones in control. The hotel manager, Evelyn, greeted us with a polished smile. "Welcome, Carter family. We're honored to host such a grand event. Here is the final contract. Please review carefully before signing." She placed the thick stack of papers on the gleaming oak table. Pages covered in numbers, fees, surcharges, extras, all adding up to nearly $80,000. I glanced through, then raised my eyes. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "By marriage and finance law, contracts related to weddings require signatures from both bride and groom to be valid. I cannot sign alone." The room hesitated. My mother frowned. "Darling, don't make this complicated. Your name is enough. They don't require Daniel." I smiled, turning toward Evelyn. "At Rosewood, is this clause mandatory?" Evelyn blinked, then nodded quickly. "In fact, our policy is to require both. It prevents disputes later." Daniel stepped forward and signed neatly under my name, his hand steady, each letter clear. My father smirked, dismissing it as minor. Sierra flipped through pages, mumbling, "Finally almost done." I laid my hand on the contract and pulled from my bag Claire's revised version. The document was thick but tidy, with one crucial change. The last clause printed in bold and underlined. "Those who sign the contract directly assume full legal and financial responsibility. Any parties not signing are not bound by obligation." I turned the stack toward my mother and Sierra. "This is the copy I requested for clarity. If anyone agrees, please sign." My mother faltered, looking to my father. He scowled. "Is this really necessary? You deal with finance, but this is family." "Family also needs clarity," I said softly. "I won't sign unless this clause is included." The tension thickened. Sierra bit her lip, eyes shimmering. "Do you really distrust me that much?" "I just want everything to be legally sound," I replied, eyes fixed on her. "If you've done nothing wrong, what's there to fear?" Evelyn stepped in smoothly. "This clause is completely legal and beneficial for all. It protects each person from unintended liability." My father huffed, but my mother picked up the pen. "Fine," she said, irritation edging her tone. "If that's what you want," she signed. Blue ink sank into the page like an indelible stamp. Sierra looked at her, sighed, then signed too. Andrew reluctantly wrote his name beneath hers. I sat still, watching each stroke. Claire's words echoed in my mind. "Once they sign, the obligation is theirs. Keep a copy with the manager's seal." When they finished, Evelyn collected the papers and stamped each page with Rosewood's red seal. "Excellent. The contract is official. Congratulations to the Carter family on your grand event." My mother forced a smile. Sierra clung to Andrew tightly, trying to bury her unease. My father stood and clapped Daniel's shoulder, smug. Only Daniel and I exchanged a quiet glance. We knew exactly what had just happened. As we left the hall, my mother leaned close and whispered, Did you really have to do that? You make it feel like you don't trust anyone in the family, I answered slowly. Mom, trust must come with transparency. I don't want more arguments. Now it's clear. Daniel slipped his arm around me, murmuring so only I could hear. You've placed the piece exactly where it belongs. Now, we just wait for them to move. I drew a deep breath, stepping down the marble stairs. The evening sun streamed through the tall windows, reflecting on the freshly signed pages. To everyone else, today was just procedure. To me, it was the beginning of a reckoning they would have to face. 1 week before the official celebration my family had been boasting about, Daniel and I quietly left New York in his pickup truck. In the back weren't crates of expensive flowers or designer gowns, just a small suitcase with the simple white dress I'd ordered online and his navy suit he wore for important occasions. We drove 6 hours north, past winding mountain roads lined with autumn maples, until we reached a small town on the shore of Vermont's lake. The wooden church stood tucked among the trees, its slender bell tower rising against the pale gray sky. The elderly pastor, an old acquaintance of Jessica's from her event days, welcomed us with a slow handshake and a kind smile. Inside, oak pews were draped with plain white cloths, small candles flickering gently. Only 25 people filled the intimate space. Jessica stood by the aisle, her eyes bright. Claire sat in the front pew, holding a sealed envelope of legal documents, our marriage license, verified signatures, the local government's seal. Mr. Brooks was there too, bringing wildflowers from his garden that morning. Daniel's parents, a few close friends, and 2 trusted colleagues all formed a small, solid circle. I walked in as soft piano notes played. The white gown brushed the floor, no veil, no intricate lace, just comfort and fit. Daniel turned, his gaze so warm I had to steady my steps. Do you take? The pastor's voice carried the simple, sincere vows. I looked at Daniel, seeing a man who had stood through every storm, offering no distant promises, only presence and partnership. When the question came, I nodded, my voice firm. Yes, I do. When Daniel slipped the silver ring onto my finger, the church seemed to glow. Bells tolled gently, echoing beyond. Applause rose. Embraces followed. No fireworks, no drones, only candlelight and the honest laughter of those who truly loved us. After the ceremony, we gathered at the lakeside cabin Daniel's parents lent us. Jessica had prepared dinner, roast chicken, fresh salad, apple pie, a long wooden table set under string lights wrapped around a tree, glasses of red wine gleaming. We laughed, shared stories, toasted memories. Claire raised her glass, her tone steady. Today is your real wedding. Everything after this is just theater. I looked at Daniel, the weight in my chest finally lifting. The documents were signed, the photos captured by a trusted friend, the marriage license filed and sealed. Everything was legal, complete. We were husband and wife, even as my family still believed the grand affair ahead was real. All week we pretended to prepare for the decoy wedding. Sierra messaged nonstop. Remember to wear the Vera Wang I picked. Don't miss the rehearsal dinner Thursday. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. I replied with brief answers, sometimes just an emoji. My mother called daily with details. The guest list had topped 300. Champagne was Dom Perignon, the orchestra hired from Boston. They were thrilled, convinced I was following their script. The night before the Rosewood Manor event, I sat at my laptop. On the screen were 3 files Claire had organized. The contracts signed by my mother, father, and Sierra, the records of fraudulent transactions, and the official marriage certificate for Daniel and me in Vermont. I saved them in a folder named Truth. Daniel came over, resting his hand on my shoulder. Tomorrow, all you have to do is breathe. Everything's ready. I looked up, smiling. Tomorrow is theirs. Today and every day after it's ours. The next morning, I put on the dress Sierra had forced me to choose, the heavy, elaborate lace, making it difficult to move. My parents looked at me with satisfied eyes. Sierra adjusted the veil, feigning tenderness. I always knew this style suited you best. I stared straight into the mirror, seeing myself as nothing more than a character in a show that wasn't mine. As the car carried us to Rosewood Manor, I quietly held Daniel's hand. In my small handbag were not just lipstick and a phone, but copies of the signed contract and the legal marriage certificate. 300 guests were waiting for a performance. I let them enjoy it, because I knew the real script had already been written in that small Vermont chapel, where I had spoken my vows in the arms of those who truly loved me. That morning, Rosewood Manor glittered under hundreds of crystal lights. The orchestra was ready, champagne towers stood tall, and white orchids lined the aisle. 300 guests filled the satin-draped tables, all eagerly awaiting the joint wedding and 10-year anniversary of the Carter family. Laughter and whispers blended as glasses were raised for the host's grand entrance. In a private room, my mother's face turned pale as Evelyn, the hotel manager, laid the stack of papers on the polished oak table. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Ladies and gentlemen, in order for the event to proceed as planned, we require full payment. The total is $80,000 minus the $5,000 deposit from Miss Nevaeh Carter. My mother snapped her head toward me, but the seat beside her was empty. My father frowned. "Where is she?" Sierra gasped. Her eyes panicked. Evelyn calmly opened the contract, pointing to the signatures. "Please note, as per the clause, those who sign directly are responsible for payment. Here are the signatures of Mrs. Marianne Carter, Mr. James Carter, Miss Sierra Dean, and her husband Andrew Dean. Miss Nevaeh Carter only signed as an honorary guest, with the note, symbolic deposit of $5,000 for her own part. The document bears our official seal." The room froze. My mother stammered, but she said she would cover everything. Evelyn smiled politely. "I'm sorry, but the document is binding. We rely solely on the signatures and stated terms." Murmurs swelled in the hall as guests realized the bride hadn't appeared. Whispers, side glances, even awkward chuckles rippled through the crowd. Meanwhile, Daniel and I sat on the balcony of a seaside hotel in Hawaii. A cold cocktail in my hand, the salty breeze swept through my hair, waves lapping steadily against the horizon. Daniel raised his camera, capturing me leaning back with a relaxed smile. I checked my phone messages poured in from my mother, Sierra, distant relatives. I set it down, leaving them unanswered. "How do you think they're handling it?" Daniel asked, half teasing, half serious. 80,000 isn't easy to swallow, I said, but they signed it themselves. I only paid my share, that 5,000. Consider it the cost of freedom. We clinked glasses. No more words were needed. A week later, as we returned to our apartment, the doorbell rang furiously. I already knew who it was. My mother rushed in, eyes swollen red, my father behind her with clenched jaw. Sierra trailed last, clutching her purse, while Andrew stood silent, anger etched on his face. "How dare you trick us like that?" my father roared. Guests waited for hours, and we had to drain our retirement to cover the bill. My mother's voice cracked. "Nevaeh, how could you be so cruel?" I calmly pulled out a chair, laying a file on the living room table. "I didn't trick anyone. Here's the recording of you and Sierra telling Rosewood I'd pay everything. Here are the emails, the contract with my forged signature, and this," I opened the stamped contract, "is the final legal document with your signatures. The clause is clear. Those who signed are responsible." Sierra's voice shook. You set me up?" I met her eyes. You set yourself up when you signed without reading." Andrew lunged forward, furious. "Sierra, you hid this from me? You said it was all taken care of and now I'm dragged into 80,000 in debt?" Sierra choked on tears. My mother tried to shield her, but my father turned away, his gaze heavy with silence. Daughter, Mr. Brooks, the elderly neighbor I'd invited as a witness, finally spoke. The truth is clear on paper. No one can force you to bear debt you never signed for. He turned to my parents. You must take responsibility for your own decisions. The room fell silent. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My father clenched his fists, but no words came. From that day, my family was forced to use their retirement to pay the debt. Sierra's marriage sank into tension, Andrew's resentment growing with every day. I cut contact, keeping my distance. A year later, on an autumn afternoon, Sierra stood at my door. No gowns, no heels, just old jeans and a loose sweater. Her face thinner, her eyes weary. I've been in therapy for 6 months, she said, her voice trembling. I want to apologize. I was wrong, so wrong. I want to start over. I studied her for a long time, catching glimpses of the little girl who once held my hand in the schoolyard. But the past could not be erased. I welcome you as my sister, I said slowly, but never again as someone who takes advantage of me. Sierra bowed her head, tears falling, and nodded. That evening, I sat in my living room. The warm light glowed over the framed photo from our Vermont wedding, Daniel and I, hand in hand beneath wildflowers, surrounded by friends. Beside it was the $5,000 receipt, framed in wood, etched with the words I had carved, the best investment I ever made for my freedom. Staring at that photo and receipt, I thought about the years of silent endurance, the countless chances stolen in the name of family. But from those wounds, I learned that freedom isn't granted, it's chosen and guarded. My story may sound familiar to many of you. Every family holds complicated ties, sometimes love tangled with exploitation. So I ask you, if it were you, standing under the weight of family pressure and the duty to your own life, what would you choose? To keep the peace on the surface or to draw a firm boundary to protect yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments, I truly want to hear them. And if you're interested in real stories of family choices and the costly lessons of life, follow this channel to join me on more journeys ahead. Because maybe, in my story, you'll see a piece of your own.